So welcome to University College Cork, as well as the amazing buildings around UCC, which people are familiar with. UCC is also very well known for its beautiful campus. And on that beautiful green campus is about 120 different species of trees, about 2,500 trees in total around the campus, and some very significant and very old specimens as well, dating back to the foundation of the university. So when this university was founded, as with all universities founded around that time, a botanic garden and a tree collection was quite central to a university in that era. So from the very beginning, led by William Hinks, the first professor of natural history, and then subsequent professors and staff members, both academic and within buildings and estates and so on, have built the beautiful green campus and the tree collection to what it is today.
Okay, so behind me we have the Bulimia pine tree, and this is really interesting. This tree was thought to be extinct up until just a very short time ago. It was only known from the fossil record going back over 2 million years ago, and some off-duty, I think it was National Park and Wildlife Service staff in Australia near Sydney found this tree on an expedition they were on, and that was about, I think, in 1996. And in terms of germplasm conservation, biotechnology has played a huge role in the reinvention, if you like, of this tree. Tissue culture in particular, and the Australian government undertook this widespread kind of to send these samples out around the world in order to preserve the germplasm of the Bulimia pine. So a really nice story about how biotechnology can be used in germplasm conservation.
So this is one of the interesting trees in the collection. This is Arbutus unedo, which is the strawberry tree. And interestingly, this is one of the Lusitanian flora. What does that mean? It means that it is, you'll find Arbutus in Spain, in the western part of France. You won't find it in Britain, but you'll also find it on the west coast of Ireland in Sligo and in County Kerry. So it's a strange distribution, and it's one of these kind of riddles in biogeography. Why does this occur in County Kerry, but it doesn't occur in Great Britain, it doesn't occur in other parts of Europe? And there's some debate as to whether this survived the last ice age or whether it arrived after the last ice age. It's a lovely plant. It flowers and fruits at the same time. It produces little white flowers and little red fruit, and its name unedo means eat once. So you'll eat it only once. The fruit isn't poisonous, but it doesn't taste very nice.
Okay, so this is another beautiful tree behind me here. This is the weeping willow, Salix Pavalonica. And Salix Pavalonica is native to northern China and can grow to a height, some of them, of about 82 feet. So an absolutely beautiful tree. So it has been cultivated for its wood, and also as it provides a great shelter belt for agricultural land, so for instance, and also for thousands of years the willow bark has been known to be excellent for treating different conditions, and this dates back to thousands of years. There are records of willow bark being used, and of course we know today that willow bark contains the prodrug salicin, which can be semi-synthesized then in the lab to, as we know, aspirin, acetyl salicylic acid. And there are loads of examples throughout the plant kingdom where if the plant doesn't necessarily provide the drug that we can use directly for patients, like morphine and codeine, it can act as a prodrug which can be semi-synthesized then under laboratory conditions. But you see, this is an absolutely gorgeous specimen.
So behind me here is the Monterey pine, Pinus radiata, and it's an iconic tree right at the main gates of the university. This pine is the most widely planted pine in the world. It's actually the most, despite it being from North America, as Monterey from California would suggest, it's the most planted tree in New Zealand, for instance, because it's used a lot for timber and for lumber and so on. It has cones, it's a conifer. The cones are what are known as serotinous, which basically means they love fire. So the heat of the fire is what makes the cones open and release the seed. Okay? So these trees actually exploit wildfires and so on. So this tree is about 90 to 100 years old. It was planted when this bridge and when the main gates of the university were built in 1929.
So this is the horse chestnut tree. This is a gorgeous tree. The scientific name is Aesculus hippocastanum. These trees are found all across Europe and they grow particularly well in Ireland. And here we'll see them in our parks a lot of the time. So again, the active ingredient found in the horse chestnut tree is something called esculin, and a number of clinical trials have been carried out with esculin. And esculin is found to have anti-inflammatory properties and also good in terms of the circulatory system. So yeah, a stunning tree.
So behind me here is our Leucum oak, and a Leucum oak is a natural hybrid of two other oaks. It's a hybrid of a Turkey oak and a Cork oak. And one of those, the Cork oak, is evergreen and the Turkey oak is deciduous. And what they've produced with this hybrid is a semi-deciduous oak tree. So it doesn't lose all of its leaves even in the depth of the winter. Now this was discovered by a guy called William Leucum, so it's named after him, who discovered it, or who bred it, probably by accident, in 1762 in his garden in Exeter in the UK. William Leucum is a fascinating character, and he was really proud of this tree that he created, so proud that he actually had the first tree chopped down and cut into planks of wood that he was going to use for his coffin. So he stored the planks of wood under his bed. Happy days. Unfortunately, or fortunately for William, he lived to be 102 years old, which is pretty impressive. And by the time they went to make the coffin, the wood had rotted completely. So he was better at growing trees than preserving trees in that respect. So it's a massive tree here. This is probably maybe 100 years old, 120 years old. There's a massive Lucum oak tree in Kew Gardens in London, which is about 240 years old. So this is a young tree by comparison.
Okay, so this tree is Taxus baccata, is its scientific name, and Taxus baccata is the European yew, or also known as the common yew. And from that common yew, this mutant is derived, and this is called the Irish yew tree, Taxus baccata fastigiata. And the yew is particularly interesting, and it's synonymous almost with graveyards and churches around Ireland. And I suppose amongst the reasons given for that possibly are that all parts of this tree are poisonous, and so it's associated with death, and so that might be one reason we see it in churches and also in graveyards. But another idea is that because it's poisonous, that by planting these trees in graveyards, it keeps livestock away from the graveyard, and there have been lots of reports in the literature of livestock poisoning on ingestion of parts of this tree. The reason I think this tree is particularly interesting is that going back, I suppose, to the late 60s, early 70s in the States, the Pacific yew tree, which is Taxus brevifolia, researchers found the active ingredient Taxol in the bark of the tree, and of course Taxol is a very powerful anti-cancer agent. But at the time, actually, it was reputed to take 7 100-year-old trees to treat one cancer patient, and of course that is in no way sustainable when you think of the prevalence of cancer in our society today. So actually researchers found that a relative of Taxus brevifolia, this baccata here, can produce the prodrug baccatin-3 in the pine needles. And of course the pine needles are a renewable resource in terms of the drug production. But of course these days scientists now produce this drug in massive bioreactors using plant cells. So still going back to the plant, but maybe less reliant on, say, the environmental growth, the conditions for the tree.
So this is a London plane behind me. The London plane are a hybrid between an American sycamore and an oriental plane. It's a natural hybrid, but probably arose in a garden in London during the 17th century. It's an interesting tree because it is so widely planted. It's a real city tree. The reason for that, it's got this camouflaged bark, and that camouflaged bark is the bark peeling off and dropping off bits which have become muddy or grimy or covered in air pollution. Its leaves repel dirt, and it's got a small root system, so it is perfect for planting in cities, and therefore obviously in London it's very widely planted, and across lots of cities in Europe it's widely planted. It probably accounts for anywhere between 1/4 and 1/2 of all the trees planted on streets in London.
So this tree is the Ginkgo biloba tree, described as a living fossil, and it's native to China, over 270 million years old. It's very popular in urban environments. You'll see these all over cities. It works well, it withstands pollution very well. It So the active ingredients, well, I suppose first of all, Carl Linnaeus, going back to the late 18th century, he described this Ginkgo biloba, so meaning the leaves you can see has two lobes, so biloba, two loba, lobes. The active ingredients from this tree are particularly interesting, and a company just out the road from here, Cara Partners, they, with their parent companies Ipsa and Schwab, going back again to the late 70s, carried out several clinical trials on the actives found in the leaves of Ginkgo biloba, and the actives have associated anti-inflammatory, again used in terms of circulation, in terms of dementia, depression. So again, a fabulously interesting tree. And another interesting fact about this tree, it's said that trees growing within a 1 to 2 kilometer blast of the atomic bomb in Hiroshima in 1945, they're the only living things to have survived that blast site, and those trees have thrived and have been thriving ever since.
So behind me are probably the two most iconic trees on campus. They're redwoods, they're Sequoia dendron giganteum, so they're giants. These trees are quite small in the grand scheme of things. The trees in their native range can reach anything up to 90 to 100 meters. These are about 27 to 29 meters respectively. The trees themselves are probably around about 150, 140 years old, something like that. We don't know who planted them. They possibly came from William Crawford's estate in Lakelands in Mahon, but they could have come from somewhere else. And they mark the boundary of what was the old campus. Over towards the Honan and the Student Centre was built on around 1880. That new part of the Botanic Garden, so the President's Garden and so on, was built. But they do mark the centre of campus and the centre of the Botanic Garden that once sat on this site as well.
So our plants are a fantastic resource and really worth looking after. I suppose we don't always appreciate, we eat our plants, but we don't always appreciate their value in the different industries that we have. So for instance, in the food industry, we can clearly see the value of our plants, I guess, and of course the beverage industry in terms of caffeine and tea and, you know, our herbal drinks. Of course, hundreds of compounds are used from plants in the cosmetic industry, and I suppose one of the ones that would be quite well known to most people would be arnica. So arnica derived from the plant Arnica montana and its North American relative Arnica chamazoni. And of course in the pharmaceutical industry we rely on about 25% of our prescription medicines come directly from plants. So you have things like the well-known morphine and codeine and all the anti-cancer agents like vinblastine, vincristine, podophylletoxin, and of course motion sickness tablets medicines, scopolamine from deadly nightshade, Atropa belladonna. And of course the antimalarials, the well-known antimalarials, things like quinine from the cinchona tree, and the World Health Organization recommends a drug called artemisinin from the Artemisa annua plant, and of course we have the heart medication digoxin from the foxglove, Digitalis purpurea. So, and that's just a snapshot of the thousands and thousands of chemicals that we use every day in the pharmaceutical industry in our lives. And you know, it's really worth remembering we need to look after and appreciate our plants.